What's up, everyone? Steven here with TechMaker Studio. In the last few episodes, we've been building out this generative NFT project from scratch, mostly in Python. And in the last episode, we started looking at how we can save the files to the IPFS network through Aleph. In this episode, we're going to jump back into that, and now we're going to look at how do we start adding metadata to the Aleph network sort of dynamically, and how do we query it back. So this is all going to come together in the next couple of episodes about why I'm doing it this way, but for now, just stick with me. In this episode, if you're looking to learn how to save data to the Aleph network with Python, this is going to be interesting for you. And it's also interesting if you're following along with the whole project. So let's just go ahead and jump straight in. Again, if you want to catch up on everything we've done so far, check out the previous few episodes, which I will link to down in the description. But for now, what I want to just start with is jumping in and adding more data to our create store call. So right now, basically all that's happening is we're using Aleph in kind of a pass-through manner. So we're just pushing the file to IPFS, and a record does get created of that event on Aleph, but there's more opportunity to actually save more information here. So what I want to actually do is essentially pass in the metadata that we want to use for our NFT in this call. And in addition to that, I want to store a ref to this ID that's coming in through the URL. And with the idea being that in the future, and we've actually got this method called get or generate NFT right now. And the idea is the first thing we're going to do when this is all said and done, which I don't know if we'll get to it today, but we're going to want to essentially store the ID in the ref so we can look it up and say, hey, does this thing exist? And if it does exist, we won't create it. We'll just render back the data. If it doesn't exist, we're going to create it. And there will be actually some smart contract queries involved with this as well, because we don't want to create it. Essentially, what we want to do is lazy minting with the NFT, so there's no way to figure out, which ID is going to represent which NFT until it's time for that NFT to actually be minted. So I have a few tricks that we're going to incorporate to do that. But for now, I'm just kind of going to get the basics set up. So if we jump over to the GitHub, this is that create store method, and you can see here that the ref basically just takes a string, and then there is this extra fields which takes a Python dictionary. So what we're going to do first is just try to actually save some stuff and see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and put all this stuff on a new line here. And what I want to do is pass in my extra fields. And we're just going to set this equal to a dictionary, like I said. And let's actually just pull this up really fast. So let's do OpenC ERC 721 metadata. And we can look here and see the metadata standard. That might or might not be what we want. So description and name. We're going to add more stuff eventually. We're going to have attributes, for example, which we're going to capture. I'm going to have to add a whole lot more images, and then we'll build out the attribute list later, because the images are going to be a little more complicated and there's going to be a lot more variety. For now, I just want to make sure that data is saving correctly and that we kind of understand how that works. So let's start with the name and the description. So I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to give it the name, let's see, we want to basically get the ID. So I'm going to say, so the name of this collection is going to be Amphibian Outlaws. And then what I'm going to do is give it a number in the same way we did above, or maybe it's below, with the F interpolation thing. Essentially what I'm going to do here is just pass in the ID. And now that should basically do that. And then for the description, I'm just going to write project description coming soon. Maybe even give myself a little to do so I don't forget. Okay, so that seems fine. And then the next thing I'm going to do is basically say ref, and that needs to be ref equals. And then we're going to give it a string, and again, I'm going to do an F thing here. Sorry I keep calling it that. I don't know what it's called in Python. I think it's string interpolation normally. But anyway, so what I want to basically do is say NFT and then give it the ID that we have here. Okay, and so let's save that. And let's just go run it, see if I made any errors or anything. So it should be, let me check my server if it's still running. Yep, so that's good. And then we just need to go to localhost 8000 slash nfts slash 1.json in my case. Okay, cool. So that looks like it worked. So let's go over to explorer.aleph.im. Let's have a look at this. So you can see here we have name and description coming back in the message content. And we have a ref here of NFT1. So basically what we're going to be able to do. So, and again, if you haven't watched the other videos, you may have noticed there's a private key that we're using to generate an account. Don't worry, that's just a test thing, and I made all the necessary warnings in the last video. But basically what we can do in the future is we can say, okay, give me back any messages that were created that have this address and then the ref NFT1. So let's look at how we can do that. Well, first and foremost, let's make sure that our metadata is coming back correctly. So we want the description. I'm going to bypass the external URL for a second. We'll add that later. I want the image and then the name, and then we'll have attributes later, like I said. To do that, so right here, we don't want this to say URL. We want it to say image. Let's go ahead and put this kind of on some new lines like that. I'm going to add the name should be result, and I'm going to assume this is all structured exactly the same name, and then we'll do the same with description. And you'll kind of see why we're doing this in just a second. Description. Okay, so let's go refresh. And you'll see, okay, all this is going to change. So now you see we have an image, we have the name, we have the description. Okay, cool. If I refresh again, take a look at this URL here. So it's QMAA1N, so on and so forth. If I refresh, now we're going to get a new one. So we're generating a new image every time, which is exactly what we don't want to be doing. So how can we do this where we don't do that? If we go back to the Aleph client here, what we want is there messages in this file? Yeah, get messages. So essentially what we're going to try to do is look up messages where we have the address is our address, the refs is our ref, and the, let's see, message type is store. Okay, so let's take a look at that. So what we can do back over in the code, first of all, what is account? Is there like account.address? Let me just pop that in here just to see really quick. Address and then account.address. Let's see if that's a method that we can call. No. ETH account object has no attribute address. Let me go check out what it does have in it. So let's come up here to the top. I'm going to go to Aleph client, chains, Ethereum, ETH account, sign message. Oh, get address. Okay, so let me try that. Back in the code, so we'll say get address, and then we'll go try this again. Cool. So you can see our address is here, and then we can see that matches this address over here. Okay, cool. So we obviously don't want that in this reply. But what we can do is say address equals account.get address. And then what we can do is say message equals await, and I'm going to need to import this from get. So let's see, get messages from this Aleph client asynchronous. So now we're going to do get messages, and let's quickly look at what kind of arguments that takes. Okay, so back over here, let me just do a quick find again. Where is that method? There we go, get messages. So it looks like these are all basically keyword arguments. So I can just pass in my ref directly, and then it's all plural, by the way. So that's going to be, it's going to be an array that is required. So we have the ref, the addresses, and then the message types. Message type is not an array, it's just a string. Okay, cool. So let's jump back to the code and kind of knock this out. So what do we need? We need the accounts like this, and then we'll say account. We need the refs equals an array, and what we're going to do is our same thing that we've been doing. Did I do that wrong? What am I doing? Oh, the F needs to be outside. Just kidding. Here we go. And then lastly, we just need the message type equals store. Okay. And I guess what we can do is just do print message really quick and see what that looks like. Why is that freaking out on me? Oh, I probably need parentheses. So used to Ruby. Okay, let's go refresh and see what happens. Internal server error. Get messages got an unexpected keyword argument accounts. It's probably addresses, and I wrote accounts. Addresses. Okay. Internal server error. Addresses. Sequence expected string instance ETH account found. Huh. I'm just like typing all the wrong stuff. You guys should warn me. Just kidding. Okay, let's try that again. All right, so it didn't explode, and you can see, okay, yeah, we're logging out messages, chain ETH, blah, 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 content. Okay, so let's see what happens if I'm going to actually close all of this stuff for the moment, and I'm just going to return a test so I don't create so much stuff. Test, hello, doesn't matter. So I'm going to like try a different ID that I haven't been to yet. So we'll go to like 42. And let's go see what came back. So you see here we have messages, and it's an empty array. Okay, so basically what we want to do is check if there are any messages, and if there are, we just want to return the first one, and if there are not, we want to create one. Okay, so back over in the code, first thing I want to do, this isn't a message, this is, let's just say this is a response from the server. And what I want to do is something like if a response messages, and let's do length of that is greater than 0. What we want to do basically is say result equals response messages, and then just take the first one. So let's try this. Let's say else, and then we'll just do like result equals an empty array or empty object or something. And what I'm going to do here is just print the result. And I'm still just returning tests and stuff down here. Basically what I'm doing here, again, I'm not really a Python dev in a lot of ways, so I'm just making sure I understand the variable scoping here, that I don't need to declare this above or something like that. So let's try this out over here, see if it explodes. Internal server error, it does. Not supported between instances of list and int. Oh, I didn't put the parenthesis in the right place. Let's go fix that. If length of that, there we go. Let's try that again. Test hello, so everything's working. I got an empty thing here. Let's try it on number 1. And you can see we get our object put back out. Okay, so that works fine. So what we want to do to wrap this up, essentially, is grab this little bit of code here. I'll uncomment and cut that. And we'll just paste that in like so. I'm going to have to tab all that in. I'm actually going to need to put this above. What else am I missing? Okay, so I don't need to print the result probably anymore. And what I want to do is just return all of this. And we'll get rid of all of that. Okay, so this is why I did the result variable scoping test, is because down here I'm going to rely on the fact that I have a result defined, and so I'm kind of defining it 2 different ways here. Okay, I guess let's try it. So what we would expect to happen if it's working is to get the same URL every time. So we have QMWMTQ. Okay, so you can see on the number 1, it's not changing every time. So let's try a number we haven't done yet, like 13. See if that works. So it takes a little longer, and now we have QMAAL. And you can see if we keep refreshing, it's the same every time, which is great. Let's take a look at what this looks like. Okay, so we've got a blue with a white and a black cigar label. Let me pull this over here. Crap. Here we go. Let's do 14. That actually looks like that didn't change. Let's try it again. Let me do one more just to make sure I'm not tricking myself, because I'm getting this IPFS hash here, which very much looks the same, but I may have just not noticed the change. So we've got QMAAL T5F, so on and so forth. Down over here we have IRXRS. Let's try it on 16. Okay, that's definitely not changing. However, we are getting back the metadata differently. So why is that not changing? So that makes me think that actually we're getting back messages here. So let's actually console log the response. That's not a console log. Sorry, I've been doing too much JavaScript. Let's do print response messages. I'm just wondering, like, not sure. Let's try it out. I might be misunderstanding something, which is totally possible. Okay. So I just refresh that one, and we get back an object. That makes sense to me. First of all, yeah, that looks like the same hash we have. Okay. Let's try to do like 51. That one gave me a different one. Okay. Um, you know what I'm wondering? I'm wondering if it's detecting that the image is actually the same and it's not actually creating a new one. Like it's going, oh, that's the same image. That could be what it is. Like if the image hash may actually be identical to another image hash, and so it might be saying we're not going to replace it. We're going to give you back the same URL to preserve storage. That could make sense because there's the likelihood that you're going to get the same image all the time, right? So it might just be that we've tried a few times. So what do we got here? What's the difference? So we have a black hat on a blue frog. I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think that's it. So if I go to like 52, okay, I've got my, yeah, that's got to be what that is. It's got to be the hash thing. I was expecting it to give me a different URL every time. And in the real one, it probably will because all the images, there should be like thousands and thousands of possibilities. Or with this, there's not, I don't know what I just did there. With this one, there's really not very many possibilities. Okay, cool. So you can see now I've got a gold label with a white hat. Okay, cool. I'm going to assume that's what it is. I'll test this more offline. But it does appear to be working if we are correct in this assumption, which I haven't done a ton of stuff with IPFS, so this would make sense as an optimization, like to hash the image and see, or hash the file, see if it already exists, and if it does, return back the original. That does make sense to me, so I'm going to assume that's what it is. Yeah, anyway, I think we're going to leave it here. We'll come back and try some more stuff later. Like I'm saying or what I was saying earlier, in the next videos, we're going to have to do some smart contract stuff, and then we'll integrate some of that here. But anyway, these are supposed to be like 10-minute tutorials, and I keep blowing right past that and going to like 20 minutes on every video. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it here, and we'll pick up in the next one. I got to think a little bit about where to go next. But anyway, we're going to get this whole project knocked out in the next like 3 to 4 days. So I'm going to record the whole process, so it'll all be online, and yeah, it should be fun. With that said, if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and I'll talk to you next time.